away, Coach.
So first of all, I'm sure that this is, I'll answer a few questions just by giving an opening statement. So today in the league is guaranteed contract day. So all contracts today that with people on the roster are guaranteed as of 5 p.m. So the reason we did what we did today is that we weren't in a position that we wanted to guarantee those contracts the rest of the season. In particular, Megan's was a situation where she was a replacement hardship. And so we would have had to pay her regardless of whether we had to let her go automatically later on. So that was the first step. I think with Stella and Kiara, it was a decision on our part to, number one, see where the rest of the league is with waivers at the end of the day. There are some other people we have looked at and we've debated about. That's not saying we might not bring one of them back on a 7-day, but 7-day contracts begin on the 1st, which I believe is Thursday. And we will sign at least one player, if not two, back on 7-day contracts beginning this Thursday. Megan will probably be one of them. And then the rest of the other is to be determined depending on what we see around the league. So this was as much procedural with timing as anything else. It's just one of those things that going forward, we wanted, some cap space to kind of figure out our roster. With all the injuries we've had, we felt that we needed some flexibility going forward. And by using 7-day contracts and the Olympic break as kind of a buffer, we can figure some things out before we resume play in August. So it gives us about as much flexibility as we could possibly have. We had already saved cap space for Emma if she decides to play, but this kind of helps that whole process along just to make sure we're in good shape. We don't have to play with 12. We've had 12 on the roster. So if we want to, we could only sign one person on Thursday and bring it to 11. That would satisfy us. And given that we only have 2 games left before the break, beginning on this weekend, that puts us in a situation where we could have a little bit more flexibility. The only other announcement I have, it wasn't in a press release, but it's going to come up probably next week, so I'll be proactive. Leilani Mitchell will probably miss our last game before the break. All the Australian players are going to leave a game or two early from their WNBA teams to go together in Vegas, and we had granted her that permission a while back, as have most of the other WNBA teams. So that's kind of our situation going forward. Questions? I'm sure there are many.
We will start with Kareem.
Hey, Mike, thanks for the breakdown. You did cover some stuff. You touched on it real quick. That was going to be my first one, actually, was how much does this play into hoping to getting Emma back or hoping Emma's back after the Olympics, or not much?
It really wasn't a lot because we had enough cap space carved out, I think, for what we needed to do. It probably gives us a little bit more leeway, but it's not significant.
Gotcha. So, I mean, generally, it sounds like you're just kind of keeping your eye out.
So I can interrupt for one thing, because Emma's contract, when she comes back, is a prorated contract no matter what. So she would only get the balance, of the season prorated. She can't make more than what would that cap amount be per game at the end of the season.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So it sounds like you guys are just kind of trying to also open up the roster to kind of maybe look to add some pieces that you maybe feel missing. Can you specify a little bit what you're looking for?
Not particularly, because it kind of depends on who's out there. I mean, clearly we've had injuries, but we're hoping that, coming out of the Olympic break, we don't have injuries. I mean, that's our hope. I just think it gives us flexibility. I just didn't want to be locked into contracts to a couple players who aren't playing much. Whether we bring one of them back or somebody else, it just puts us in a situation. If we sign 7-day contracts, you can sign a particular player, just pick any player, player A, you can sign to 3 consecutive 7-day contracts. So, and those contracts, if you sign one going into the break, whatever, that player is allowed to practice with you during the Olympic break, and it doesn't count as part of their 7 days. So let's say you signed to somebody to a 7-day contract 4 days before the break. They would have 3 days coming out of the break at the end of their 7-day contract. And so that gives us flexibility from a practice standpoint during the break. We're going to be missing, several players with the Olympics. So, this gives us, a lot of room to do things. There's no reason necessarily to be locked into 12 players for the rest of the year right now until we see how things play out. And so for me as a GM, I felt we needed to have the most options possible available to us and not be locked into guaranteed contracts the rest of the year.
So as we're talking roster, just kind of a quick immediate thing. Maisha and Natasha, I know the hope was to have them tomorrow. Do you think they'll be ready?
I don't know. They both did workouts today. They did shooting and they did 5-on-0 with some of their teammates to practice through plays and stuff. Tomorrow will be a game time decision probably to see how they feel. Each day they've gotten better, but we're in a situation where if we feel like playing will jeopardize their injury and possibly make it worse, then we'll err on the side of caution. I don't like to necessarily go into a game with only 6 or 7 players, but that may be what we have to do for this year for one game to have a bigger picture look at it for the rest of the season. I want us to be healthy come August and September. I want us to be playing at our best basketball. And if that means that, tomorrow we can't play our best basketball, so be it. I mean, we'll give it our best shot. But I want to see how they are tomorrow and not jeopardize anybody.
And speaking, since we, all talking roster stuff and mentioned Emma, have you had any updated conversations with her at all?
No, I've had an updated conversation with her agent. Nothing specific that I, going to share. She has connected with a lot of her teammates, and she was in a good frame of mind. So I don't know. I don't really have an answer, and I don't know that I'll have one immediately. I mean, this may be as simple as, first of all, she just finished playing yesterday. I texted with her about a week ago, just wishing her luck in Eurobasket. She gets a short break with her national team right now, and then they're going to reconvene, I think, in 10 days from now to start practicing for the Olympics. So she needs a break, and that's what she's going to do. And then I think she'll kind of try to figure it out over the next, month or so.
Gotcha. And one non-roster kind of question that I was going to ask anyways. Just going into as we're going into the break, you've talked a lot about how much all the teams are kind of squeezed together in the standings, not very much difference between, 3 and I do believe 9, something like that.
Right now it's a game and a half between 3 and 10, I think.
Exactly.
Or 4 and 10, excuse me.
4 and 10. Yeah. From your perspective, what kind of brings so much parity this year, or is it, there's been a ton of injuries? Has that played in? Just curious what your thoughts are of how the standings are shaking out right now with everybody so tight together.
I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, you have some teams that are missing players like us with Emma. You have teams that have had a lot of injuries. We're probably leading the list in that, but there are others. I mean, New York's been without Natasha Howard. LA's been without Nneka Ogwumike. You go through several teams and you see those kinds of things. Atlanta just lost Tiffany Hayes. And, 1 or 2 key players when the league is that balanced and even is a big deal. I mean, when we were out in Seattle, I mean, they were, knocking on wood saying, hey, the best thing for us right now is we've stayed healthy as a team. Vegas has stayed healthy. And so, it makes a big difference. Connecticut's not the same team with Jonquil Jones being gone for a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, she'll probably play tomorrow, so we'll have to face her. But I think, when you take star players out of teams, when the league's fairly even, I think the parity in our league is probably as good as it's ever been from top to bottom. I know Indiana's struggling. But right now you have the 10th or 11th team being able to beat the first place team. That's how good the league is as far as being even. Look at what happened with Chicago. They lose 7 straight games without Candace Parker, and she comes back and they win 7 straight. It's that kind of situation. I mean, there's no other simple real answer for that. I think there's a lot of teams can't wait for the Olympic break to come to try to get healthy and get rested and try to fix some things. But a team like us, we can maybe get healthier, but we're going to be without 3 or 4 key players who are at the Olympics. And so some of the things we can work on are a little bit in a vacuum, in that we have to still assimilate those players back in once they get here.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. I'll let
Yep.
somebody else ask some stuff now.
Jen.
Hey, Coach. On the injury front, is Ariel good to go?
As far as I know, I think she'll be fine. We were going to do a precautionary MRI this afternoon just to be safe, but she made it through the game reasonably well the other day. I'm sure she's still pretty sore, but we'll see. What happens when we get the results. But I anticipate her playing.
And, not practicing today, is that just trying to give players more rest? Is that tied to today's announcement?
Yeah, it's partly that, meeting with those players. It's partly giving some players who have been beat up from that trip extra rest. We had some players in to do individual workouts. We had a group go through plays that, haven't had a chance to just kind of do that. We've had very few practice days. We had 1 practice day last week at the start of the week in Seattle. Obviously it helped us. But then we played every other day and we traveled those off days. And so practice would have been nice, but being as shorthanded as we are, I'd rather have rested healthier bodies for tomorrow than, practice taking something from us.
And, regarding today's decisions, it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're saying that the Olympic break kind of gives you more flexibility to be able to do this than maybe a normal season. Is that accurate? And then does this round of moves change your plan for how you're going to set up the schedule of that break?
I don't know. We haven't really talked about how it would set up the schedule. I mean, we've kind of got a plan in place about what we'll do. It looks like, from what I understand, we'll probably be allowed to have fully vaccinated male practice players once the practices start during the break. So that will alleviate a few of our, numbers issues. I don't know if it would be different in the break. I mean, it's a little bit unique for us in the sense too that after tomorrow, we only have, 1 game later this week and 1 the following week. And so, it would be a time for us to kind of get caught up. I don't know that I would make the decision any differently, break or no break, because we could always sign these players back later this week. It was a matter of the contracts being guaranteed, and that ties your hands for the rest of the year. When you have all those guarantees, unless you trade somebody, you're stuck. And most of the teams in our league, probably 75% of the teams in our league, are within shouting distance of the cap right now.
And then last question for me, I know you could re-sign these players and everything, but you mentioned Kira and Stella not playing as much as perhaps you'd anticipated. And just curious, how you evaluate their development, in particular Kira, since you drafted her, to get to this point.
She missed all of her first year. Last year in the bubble, she played, I think, 19 of the 22 games. Saw some progress. This year it's been up and down. And my feeling was, with a player that's up and down, that I don't want to guarantee him.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Tyler.
This is that January date that the NBA has all the time.
Hey, Mike, good to see you. First question is kind of with all the injuries that you have right now and having a game tomorrow and the flexibility of being able to get people in position to play, how much was that a factor in the decision for waiving these 3 players or waiving or the moves that you could have made?
No, I mean, by keeping them, we would have had more guarantee of more healthy players. But one game shouldn't dictate that. The goal for us is to be playing in the playoffs and be playing at our best. And that, if we don't keep that goal as our main objective, then we're making mistakes. Making a decision based on one game would be a bad decision as far as I'm concerned. And so, I feel like we had to do what's best for this team going forward in the long term. And I thought that was the best we could do it.
And then kind of piggybacking off of Jen's question on Kiera, I mean, she looked to be maybe one of the young players that you kind of helped be a part of that younger core behind all of the star players. Just what does that do kind of for the future of the team in the long term?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't been banking my future of the Washington Mystics on Kiera Leslie. I would be a collective group, and that's not a slap at her. I can't base it on, if she were a starter for us, that would be a different conversation. But you're talking about, somebody who is the 9th or 10th player. That doesn't preclude her from ever being back here right now. But I think that, to be honest, I think she needed a reset too on what expectations are in our organization.
That's it for me. Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
I think that's it, Coach. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yep.